Hello, welcome to this IGTV replay or live if you're watching live. Here are 5 tips that can help you to set boundaries. So I am not going to wait because I am going to go straight into it. So I get my notes up. Well, I'll just let the 12 o'clock chime. There's always a chime in Japan, 7 a.m., 12 o'clock and 5 p.m. And hopefully it's not too loud. I don't think you can hear it actually. So let's start. So setting boundaries, how does that make you feel? I really do think that we live in a society that does not really teach us to be assertive. Hello, Jay. And I'm not sure, I mean, this is my personal opinion and you might disagree, especially if you are male, but I feel like as a woman, we really aren't taught to say no or be assertive. We are very much in an environment where we are told to like people please and to keep the peace and, you know, because being angry or having strong emotions is sort of seen as a weakness. I think setting boundaries can seem a bit aggressive and angry, and women are generally don't like to be called an angry woman, which is total bullshit. So that's number 1 tip, is that understanding that it's kind of not really in our environment to feel comfortable with setting boundaries, especially as a woman. If you are male and you're watching this and you disagree, let me know in the comments, and I'm totally up for hearing this as a discussion, as it's just my opinion. Number 2, being worried about others more than your own self. So it goes back to point number 1, tip 1. Of course, if you are always thinking of others and wanting to keep the peace, you are not as likely to think first of yourself and more thinking about others, rather than just, you know, it can be really simple. Like when someone asks you something, it's also an honesty thing, setting boundaries. Like maybe you'd rather say, you know, someone invites you to something and you're tired and you don't feel like it, or for whatever reason, and you say yes or maybe, and then they might expect you to come, but actually you could have said no, and of course, yeah, maybe they'll be upset. And but really, if you're going to be accepting, if you're not going to set your boundaries and then afterwards be upset that you didn't say what you wanted to say, because you haven't really practiced this sense of boundaries, then of course that's going to affect you. So really it's like being honest. So it's kind of back to the theme of like self-trust and just generally trusting that you have enough, that you feel enough and you feel comfortable to speak and have boundaries, is just, so there's a lot involved with boundaries, but I will discuss that at the end. And tip number 3, I think that it is generally for a lot of people much easier to say maybe or yes instead of actually saying no when setting their boundaries. And that is maybe a thing in certain societies. Growing up in the UK, people don't really speak their mind. Living here in Japan, it's very much you want to keep the peace and you don't really want to be abrupt or, you know, not have a peaceful environment. So that's just sort of the culture. So yes, of course, it's always easier to say maybe and yes, but if you don't mean it, it's kind of actually very dishonest. But I guess, I don't know, I always feel like somehow being dishonest and not really saying what you really think is sort of more acceptable than actually setting your boundaries, which is questionable in my own opinion. Number 3 tip for how to set your boundaries is, I have a little story. So I have a very critical mother. She's Japanese. I think that's quite a common thing in Japanese society, is for mothers to be incredibly critical of their children, or perhaps in other societies too. Let me know if that's the case for you. And I didn't really realize this. It was just something I grew up with, obviously living really far from my mother. Lives in the UK, she's Japanese, and I live here in Japan. So there's quite a lot of distance. So if I talk to her, she's not a very clingy parent. if I talk to her, it's very general things, and it's not very deep. It's not very big conversations about my feelings or anything. And but her criticism does affect me, and it makes me, I think it really goes back in quite deeply of, like the sense of not feeling good enough perhaps is because I've had a really critical parent. So my husband noticed this and was like, you know, how she talks to you and what she says is not right. Like, you need to speak up. And I was just like, wow, what do you mean? It's like normal. And it's funny how we normalize behaviors because we just sort of grew up around it. But he grew up in a very different environment to me, and you know, noticed this, and obviously notice how, you know, my mom being critical affects me. And it's little comments like, you know, you've put on weight, or like your hair looks like this, or your skin looks like that. And it just sort of slowly digs at you. So next time I talked to her, because I was going to spend a week or so with her while she was visiting, we were going to sort of travel together to see my grandmother further south in Tokushima, which is like this island down further south of Japan. It's one of the 4 islands. And she just made a comment, and I just had to say to her, like, please, just... I had to make it about me because it was about me. I was like, I don't like it when you talk to me like that. And she got really defensive. She said she has to be careful what she says around me, which I feel like you probably should. I know that once you get family, you get too close and you feel like you can say whatever you want, but that's not the case. I think we should always try, because obviously sometimes we're in a bad place ourselves, but to treat those around us and those closest to us the best that we can, because it's just a self-reflection of how you treat your own self in your own mind. And yeah, she got really defensive. It got a bit teary. And after that, she was actually really good. And I think she really resented that she couldn't just say mean things to me. But I very much set my boundaries and was like, not taking this shit. Like, if you want us to have an enjoyable time together, just don't criticize me. I'm not going to criticize you or take the piss out of your English, which is something that she was upset about. But she very much then made it about herself, which is quite normal when you talk to someone and set your boundaries, because we are all very self-centered people. That's just the nature of a human, and we always make everything about ourselves, which isn't. And that's always something really important to remember. And number 5 tip after this really long story is be more French. And I don't know how you feel about the French. I'm half French, but the French are very assertive. It's very much a cultural thing. You're very much, entitled, essentially, to say, I don't like it, or I'm not happy with this, or no. And a lot of time, people don't even say please, because that's the culture. It's like, you're just assertive. You say what you need to say. Obviously, if you're like English or Japanese, it's probably quite shocking, or Australian, as my husband found. And I think that it's something actually really important to learn, to just be more assertive and just say no and be okay with it. And you don't have to make excuses of why you're not going to do something. Obviously, if you are busy or it didn't work out for you that time, you're always welcome to make it another time and try again with the person who is on your case. In this case, I'm setting an example of, like, if you don't want to do something and you're invited to it, if it's in the case of setting your boundaries because someone is hurting you and your feelings, then that's a bit of a different story. But also saying no, not ghosting them, but just saying how you feel, see what they say, and if they still disrespect your boundaries, then that's on them and it's not on you. So that was 5 tips for setting your boundaries. I hope you got something out of this. I'm making this really short because I actually have to go and I have to eat. I'm getting hungry and it's lunchtime. But yes, this will be one of the 7 pillars. Boundaries is something that completely comes very easily to me. I know that it doesn't for others. And it's one of the 7 pillars of my upcoming yoga online course, the Feel Good course. And if you would like to join, you can DM me or just comment in the replay below, and or you can go tap, because obviously you're not clicking because you're on your phone, you can tap the link in bio and you should see the Feel Good course waiting list. And I'll be talking probably more about, I'm talking about this on Instagram, but also more details about it via email. And it'll be happening in May. And yeah, I hope that you got something out of this live. And yeah, feel free to comment below what you think. If I've offended you or said something that you didn't like, let me know. And that's it. So I hope to hear from you soon, and I hope you have a lovely day, and goodbye.